What's going on, y'all? This is the Canucks Conversation with a beautiful view over Rogers Arena and the city of Vancouver downtown. This is the Canucks Conversation. My name's Chris Faber, joined in here on Fridays by Harm Dial. What's the mood? What's the mood, Harm, before I talk about Zephyr Epic a little bit? How's your mood?
It's funny because I was actually just thinking about this. I was watching a podcast recently. I think the YouTube channel is Diary of a CEO, and he had a lady on, and she had this amazing story of how she's overcome a lot of trauma in her life, and just in general, just so inspirational. And one thing that she was saying was this idea that one of the ways to really improve your well-being is to always, like, anytime you have a negative thought in your mind, flip it into a positive, right? So the example she gave is, oh, it's raining outside. And then the challenge is you have to go, but at least, and then you have to add in a positive thought. And I've actually been implementing this the last few days, and it's been awesome, right? Taking every negative thought I have about anything in life and then flipping it into a positive.
Okay.
I'm not going to lie, the Canucks are the hardest part in my life in terms of taking a negative and turning it into a positive. Like, I'll start a sentence where it's like, the Canucks are screwed, and then I'm forced to go in my head, but at least, and then I don't even know what, like, half the time what I'm going to say for the but at least. So it's just funny because it's one thing that I've tried to implement in my life. And I know on the last Friday episode we kept it all positive only, and like, man, this is how the team rewards us, I guess.
Yeah. Said here comes the money. I see in the chat here people are excited for you to be here on Friday, but it's funny because the title of today's podcast, and you'll see that on YouTube as well, but it's impossible to be positive. That's the name of this. So as you come in here and you're like, what you should do is flip every negative and try and make it some sort of positive. That's what the first thing up on our ticker is. That's the name of today's title of the episode. Before we dive into it a little more, got to handle some business here. Shout out to the great folks over at Zephyr Epic. That is what Harmon's here comes the money payment comes from. The great folks over there at Zephyr Epic. What do I got? A Pokemon card to show off today for the YouTube folks. A Vaporeon Jungle Edition. Look at that. I get the camera focus on that. A beautiful card. Got this for Christmas, actually.
Hell yeah.
Some of the stuff my fiance got me very Pokemon themed, including this shirt. A Pokemon shirt. My first Pokemon shirt. So I'm pretty happy about that. I got the shorts. You've seen the Pikachu shirt.
Oh, yeah.
Those don't
those
don't go on camera. Yeah.
They have to one day, though.
I was thinking that might be a fit for, like, you and I. We'll see if we're going back to pickleball on Sunday or not.
We are.
I think we are. Okay, good. Because I was going to say, I got Abbotsford at 1.
I'm bringing a friend, too.
Canucks at 2. Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
We're going to come in with new paddles.
I like it. Have you gotten a new paddle?
That's before we come on Sunday, me and my friend, because he's never played before.
Yeah.
He's going to have to get a paddle anyway, so I figured we'll both swing a trip and then go straight on to the community.
I think we can say that at this point, I'm excited for some fresh meat into pickleball. Some guy who's never played before. Has he played before?
No.
Okay, perfect. Fresh meat.
He's generally a pretty athletic guy, though.
See, that's what we thought, though.
Quick.
That's what we thought with us.
But it took us three sessions before we were dunking on the old people.
This is true, and now we're rolling. We'll see if the new year provides new wins for us in the pickleball realm. But also, bring back the viewing party. Montana's, the daily deals. I think we got the picture of Harm and I at Montana's. You can pull that up, Alex. I know Aaron had that last week. Of Harm and I standing outside of Montana's. But we've been home during the pandemic. We've lost out on the good times going out with friends. Montana's is bringing back the viewing party. Head to Montana's, where the game is always on and the daily deals are there to keep you full. Half-price wings on Mondays. Tuesdays, Harm, bring your kid. $2. Kid can eat for $2. Good deal over there.
So you're bringing me so I can eat for $2?
Well, no, I think you might be. We talked about this yesterday on the show. Is there a minimum age for being a kid, and is there a maximum age for being a kid? Because maximum, I think for sure, right? You can't be bringing like a 17-year-old in there, like growing teenager, to like eat. There's a picture of us at Montana's. But I was saying, is there a minimum age too? Like, do you have to be 3? No. Like, are you still an infant before you're a kid? Right? Because that's a thing.
Sure.
I would think. Anyways. Montana's BC locations: Fort St. John, Kelowna, Langley, Nanaimo, Prince George, Tawasin, and Victoria. Let's get into it, Harm. Canucks. I honestly want to, I haven't had you here all week. I've been chatting with quads all week, and listen, that wears on me enough. But I want to get your opinion on a lot of this. So a lot of this, I just want to set you up and kind of go. This is going to be a Vancast style show, actually, where before when situation now with you, I hear it. Farhan lets you roll quite a bit, but it's going to be more of like a Drance version where I'm just going to let you go and I'm going to be setting you up for the show as I get my fireplace set up behind me. That looks good. Let's get started on the top of the ticker there. Impossible to be positive. Canucks coming off of a 5-4 loss to the Lightning. I don't know where to start with this one because it actually, the 5-4 score doesn't look too bad. And I thought the Canucks actually played as good as you kind of could have hoped against that. It
was a really good first period.
Yeah, they came out and played some good hockey in this game. If you're looking at that type of game, you're thinking, hey, if this team's going everything in the right direction like it was doing during the Boudreau bump last year, they probably win that game. If you get great goaltending from Thatcher Demko, and you're able to capitalize on the power play, you win that game. You win that game.
Same logic applies to the Winnipeg game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They played well enough to where it wasn't that they played great, but it was just good enough. It was like a B- or C+ sort of performance, which last year when everything was going right, when they had elite goaltending, when they had the power plays you mentioned rolling, which has gone ice cold recently, they would have pulled out 2 points. And we would have been looking at that and going, I don't know if that's sustainable based off their 5-on-5 play, but they're rolling. And yet this season, they're somehow worse in every goal prevention department. And the power play has gone ice cold, as we mentioned.
And it's wild. I see Corey's in the chat here, and shout out to everyone in the chat here. I see Prodigy's in here with some questions for you. Lisa's always here. Commander Vander back on their original account. Corey as well. But Corey brought up the penalty kill. And it's weird because we're not talking... We don't have to talk about the penalty kill being like a 60%, in the 60s. What is it, 67-ish% now at this point?
Yeah.
It's wild that this season has gone this way, and there's so many other problems you can point to first or bring up as a topic first before you even get to how bad that penalty kill has been this season, because that's another thing that has let this team down. It let them down last year, so it's almost like people have gotten used to it. In those games where they were still losing, they were still winning the power play battle sometimes, right?
Yeah.
At least sometimes they get it, or they get good goaltending at 5-on-5 to keep them in a game. When everything's not going the right way for this team, it's completely in shambles. And I think that's where we're at right now. And this is why it's impossible to be positive. Here you go, Harm. 5-4 last night.
Yeah.
Another loss to the Canucks on this road trip. Give me a positive. Turn this negative into positive thing that you're talking about.
It's Friday.
Okay.
That was the biggest one I thought about. It's Friday. It's
good.
Not a Canucks game day.
That's good.
So you don't have to suffer or waste 2-3 hours and watch that. Oh, Team Tank.
Yes.
Team Tank, baby. Andrei Vasilevsky, robbing Curtis Lazar there. Matt,
let's touch on that real quick.
Yeah.
What's Lazar doing on the ice there?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Here's my take. I think Boudreau looks at Lazar, thinks that he needs a net front sort of guy who can crash and bang. And I don't know why. We've seen this in the past where earlier in the year, on the first road trip, for example, in the Washington game, Boudreau bumped Lazar up to the Pettersson line.
Mm-hmm.
Boudreau bumped, I think maybe around a month ago for a couple games, Lazar up to the Horvat line.
Yep.
He just seems to be the go-to net front crash and bang sort of, we need that sort of archetype of guy. Let's go to Lazar, which doesn't make sense because you have, even if you want that guy, why would you not have Dakota Joshua, who's actually scored some goals this year? Lazar's the least dangerous offensive player on this team. I like Lazar a lot in terms of what he can do with his physicality, blocking shots. I think he's a great dude to have in the locker room. But of all the guys you'd want with the game tying shot on his stick,
you're just looking to score a goal at that point.
Yeah.
You're looking to score a goal. And
maybe you're looking to tank. Maybe Boudreau's just like, get me out of here.
It's so weird. It's weird that we're getting to that point where I think sometimes you can question if this team is playing 5D chest and doing a tank on per. I think that's how bad this team has been. You can actually start to question that. And you brought up Lazar. Listen, you're right. I love the energy that he brings. I think he's an incredible energy player. I also think he's incredible with us in the media. He's one of the best guys and one of our go-tos in the locker room for a lot of people. But he's out there as the extra man to help with the attack. He's got 1 assist in his last 28 games. He has no goals in those last 28 games.
Well, Lazar's a BC boy. He's a Canucks fan growing up, so maybe he's just aware of all the pain and suffering, and he's
got some ties with Connor Bedard. Yeah, I don't know, maybe he coached Connor Bedard when he was a little kid at a camp somewhere or something like that. Yeah, I mean, that one was an interesting one. Also, I think one of the bigger, probably the biggest takeaway from yesterday's game wasn't the score, wasn't, Lazar being out there at the end, it wasn't Kuzmenko not being out. It was, I think, Quinn Hughes' comments on the Tanner Pearson injury. And we can pull those up here, Alex, just the Hughes on Pearson conversation. And I saw a great tweet last night from Wyatt talking about, it's great that there's media still on the road, because without media on the road, you don't get a quote like this from.
Well, the Canucks edited out of their scrum when they posted their video.
And to that, it's like,
I get why.
And this is the first time people will notice that. That happens almost every scrum.
Yeah.
Like some scrums, you'll get the full thing where it's like, but if we're talking to a player, like say we do a Luke Shen scrum and it's 8 minutes long, they're not going to post the full 8 minutes. But this was selective editing. Yeah,
exactly. And it was a short interview in the first place.
Yeah. So the thoughts on it, we'll read it here. This is this is from Patrick Johnson of the Province, who's on the road covering the team right now. He had to bear through Winnipeg to get to Florida, so I'm sure he's in a much better mood now. But Quinn Hughes talking about the news of Tanner Pearson's season being over, which I think we touched on yesterday on the show. If not, we'll circle back on it. What Hughes said was that wasn't handled right, talking about the situation with Tanner Pearson, which is now multiple surgeries. Look, well, we know his season is going to be over, and I think there's question about the future of Tanner Pearson even playing hockey with this Canucks team. So, it was interesting. I heard Pat Brisson today on Donnie and Dolly kind of not necessarily defending Hughes, because I don't think Hughes did anything wrong here. Hughes told us what he thought about the situation. He said that wasn't handled well, or that wasn't handled right. That could very well be true, right? And it's difficult for this Canucks team and to see so many changes to the medical staff. I don't think that's a problem. Like, I see people like, oh, you completely cleared out the medical staff in the past. Like, it's very different. Listen, these guys are perfect. If you're getting yourself into a situation, I just think it's a situation where we don't know the decisions that were made to get to the point of doing these surgeries, but it feels like if Hughes is going to come out and say this type of quote, clearly something could have been done differently that maybe wouldn't have gotten to this point. And people love Tanner Pearson in that locker room. He's one of the glue guys actually in this group, I think. And he's one of the guys who, like, I find it, Pearson's spot to me in like the locker room is interesting because I think he really gets along with the veterans, right? He's a veteran guy, but it feels like he's got, not like to the Luke Shen level of dad, but I feel like Pearson is sort of like the second dad-ish type player to
second uncle.
Yeah, like he's a good uncle. That's a good way of saying it. Like, he feels like Pearson is that uncle that you really like. And I feel like that's the way that some of these younger players look at Pearson. He's won cups. He's able to provide that veteran leadership when needed. And listen, on the ice, you can say what you want. He hasn't been good this season for sure. But as a person, I think he's very highly respected from a lot of these young players and older players in this room. I think everyone in this room, you could hear it from Tyler Myers, the way he was speaking on it. This is just another line of, wow, another storyline for the Vancouver Canucks that isn't positive this season.
Definitely. And when the Canucks tweeted the news out that Pearson was shut down for the rest of the season, it was interesting that they had the follow-up right there that it was his second additional procedure following the original one.
Yeah.
In other words, there's been 3 surgeries already for a broken hand.
Yeah.
That tells you that something's gone wrong.
Do we know for like, I thought I saw there was an infection as well. I don't know if that was just people reporting. I don't think the team put out anything like that, but I thought
no, the team officially didn't say anything.
And like for people that are asking, I see some people in the chat asking about it. Yeah, it was a Montreal Canadiens game months ago now.
Yeah.
Where it looked like it was weird. It wasn't like a slash. It was almost like the hand went into.
It was almost like a fell. And his like hand was like, he fell on his hand basically in a really awkward way. And those suck. I've broken my wrist doing that before playing sports. So those can be nasty, but 3 surgeries, according to the team's official statement when that news came out. The other thing to kind of keep in mind is I've covered, look, I get the whole notion, and I think Brisson on Dolly and Dolly's tried to sort of bring it up, and obviously he's going to try and support his client and make sure it doesn't seem like as big of a deal. But I don't it was an emotional situation. They were coming off the loss. Hughes had played a lot of minutes. He was clearly upset. But knowing Hughes and covering him for my 4th season now, having had the privilege of having a lot of conversations with him over the years, he's not the sort of player that he's not like JT Miller, where in the heat of a moment he's all of a sudden gonna slip up and
Right.
say something super emotional, hard on his sleeve that he wishes he could really have back. For me, Hughes has always been a really calculated, smart player. He's always been even keeled, laid back. He knows, like, could there be a certain element of, okay, he was emotional in that situation? Absolutely. But I think he would have known in the moment that, okay, what could the potential reaction be? And there's nothing wrong with him saying that. Like, to me, the fact that he spoke up in the first place says that, again, as you mentioned, first of all, that Pearson's a really valued teammate, and he's well liked as a person, and we obviously don't know the full story, but clearly from the players' perspective, there was something that went wrong there. And the bigger concern, of course, is, look, I'm not trying to blame fingers at anyone or the medical staff, but if this is a situation where it's perceived that the team didn't do the player right, that there was a misdiagnosis or whatever, it all it does is add to the negative perception surrounding the franchise.
For sure.
And the fact of the matter is, players talk. Players around the league are all friends with each other. You look at a player like, just an example, a guy like Hughes in the offseason, they train sort of geographically, where when he's training in the summers, he's training with the likes of like Kyle Connor and Andrew Kopp, obviously his brother, a lot of Michigan area guys. You even see that in Vancouver. Vancouver area guys kind of train together.
I like a Kelowna. I mean, Kelowna has that massive,
exactly. I mean,
group there.
even when Lane Peterson sort of came in, Luke Shen already knew him so well, right? So it's a league where players know each other pretty well, and word can kind of spread about, like, if players on the Canucks just generally, and I'm not speaking about this specifically, but when you look at the overall situation this club has been mired in, a lot of the dysfunction, the lack of connectedness between the management and the coaching staff, the lack of just big picture direction, and all the things that have gone wrong for this franchise. If players on that team are upset and don't feel like aren't happy with the way the Canucks are going, the rest of the league's going to know, and that's going to be the reputation that starts being built about this Canucks team, and that's just the last reputation you want to have as a franchise. Vancouver should be a destination franchise. Look at the city. This team spends to the cap. You have an opportunity to live here, and obviously there are downsides with playing in a Canadian market, but you think back to the 2011 Canucks, they were always a destination team. There was always rumors about them being involved in the top free agents, guys like Matt Sundin, Shane Doan, of course, obviously being able to bring a guy like Dan Hamhuis in. And it's just been kind of sad to see this franchise get to the point where, even in free agency, the only way they've been able to bring guys in is by drastically overpaying for them. When you look at Beagle,
extra million,
Roussel, like that's their draw, is we'll overpay for you, instead of situations around the league where this does happen, where if a veteran sees a chance to win, sometimes they will take less money. I mean, look at Mark Giordano. He's still a top 4 caliber defenseman. He'd be the second best defenseman on this team, and he signed with the Leafs for under $1 million.
I think that's the thing that, to me, is you talk about this being a destination. Listen, the city is a destination in its own right. The organization should be as well. Look back to what Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who we'll get to right now, actually, but like what he was saying, like getting out of that Arizona market, getting into the Vancouver market, he was excited. He was excited to go to a city that really cared about this team.
So was Garland.
And Garland as well. That's the thing. I mean, you're right. You nailed it when you said, like, this is a destination organization, or at least it used to be. Right? With everything that's happened this season, man, it's, Commander Vanner said in the chat, makes a bad look much worse. It's kind of just the feeling of this season up to this point. And I also agree with what Commander Vanner said here, that I think I had this conversation with you last week. Like, I do think Hughes is the type of player that could captain this team in the future. Like, I seriously do. It's not just like a moment like this. I know everyone goes back to the JT Miller thing last year or 2 years ago in the COVID, when he was talking about, like, we can't play, put the foot down here. This isn't like that. This is just another case of adding on to my thought that I think Quinn Hughes could be the captain of this team moving forward, with the way that he would be able to handle the media and how he would be able to handle being elite, like putting into that leadership position, I do think that's a spot where Quinn Hughes could be for this team moving forward. But OEL, let's move into that a little bit.
Another positive.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, actually might be an easier thing for you to turn a negative into a positive here, because a healthy scratch for OEL last night. That was the first of his career here with the Vancouver Canucks, the first since his early days with the Arizona Coyotes. What's next? What's next here for OEL and the Vancouver Canucks? Listen, it's a massive deal. I think in the Vancouver market, we understand that it's a big deal to sit Oliver Ekman-Larsson. But if you were to take this from an NHL view, like the scope of the league,
yeah,
healthy scratching a guy who's making $7.26 million, has a cap hit on his contract of $8 million plus. That is a massive, massive deal around the league. I think it tells to the situation of the cap in the NHL to a degree as well. Like this is a contract that's not like expiring this year and he's 38 and he's at the final year of it and you don't have to worry about it anymore. There's years and years and years of this down the road of Oliver Ekman-Larsson. How does this future look right now from the moment yesterday of him being healthy scratch? Because that's where I think this situation with OEL kind of opens up a few different avenues now with this healthy scratch. Like it's like, okay, they're willing to healthy scratch him at this point in the contract. What are they willing to do down the road? What are they willing to do in the summer when buyouts come around? I feel like this opens that door even more than it might have been potentially being opened in the past. Actually healthy scratching him, that also adds to it to me. Like that opens that door wide open.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different angles to sort of play in terms of the scratch. For starters, when you talk about what's next, the future, that sort of thing, right off the bat, I think we all recognize that he's not getting traded. Mm-hmm. It's an impossible contract to move. He's got the no move clause. The cap hit is just way too high. No team around the NHL is going to want that. And if they weren't already aware that he's been having a tire fire of a season with the Canucks, now seeing all the headlines, they will be aware.
Yep.
So right off the bat, you're not trading that. The buyout option, I think it is viable further down the line. I don't think it's viable yet when you talk about this summer, because I was looking at okay, if you bought the contract out in the summer, what would it look like? You'd have a dead cap charge until...
I think we have it up. You can pull it up here, Alex. It's in the workspace somewhere here.
You'd have a dead cap charge until 2031. I would be in my 30s.
Wild.
That's nuts. And so to think that buying him out now, you'd be taking a penalty on till the next decade, it's not worth it, because when you... the Canucks aren't going to win the Stanley Cup next year.
No, and that's when they have the $8 million of savings. Then you're paying for all that down the road.
Yeah, so to me, it doesn't make sense why you would create a cap disadvantage that spans until 2031.
When hopefully there's a window.
When hopefully they're a good team,
right?
For the cap savings and advantages for a team that's not going to win the Cup next year. To me, it doesn't make sense. And obviously, the later down the contract you wait to buy it out, the less years you're going to face that dead cap penalty. So to me, I still think that if I was in management's position, I would look at it and go, I'm just going to take this on the chin, at least for next season.
Yeah.
But that's where I have the question of, okay, if they're going to lose Horvat, they already have a lack of sort of cap space. I just hope that they don't have any sort of pressure or incentive or this feeling of we got to make the playoffs next year. And based off that logic, they then go, all right, let's just buy them out now. Because if you're Jim Rutherford or if you're Patrick Alvin, because we can look at it and go, why would you want a dead cap charge until 2031? But if you're Jim Rutherford or Patrick Alvin, do you honestly think you're still going to be here by 2031?
No.
I don't care.
So that's the thing. That's why, we talk about ownership so much. I feel like ownership has to have a right decision here, because you're right. Would Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin be that against this deal? Do they really think they're here in 2030? And I love Jeff Rowe's comment in here. It says, Harm, you're too young to make this, sound a little bit intense. Jeffro says he's going to be in his 50s when in 2030. So like you sounding like you're in your 30s.
No. I'm not saying
sound that
no,
bad.
no. I'm just saying in the sense of like, I'm not that I'm old, but it's just like I'm literally
you're
like
supposed to be so young.
I'm supposed to be a kid. And it's like that. That's the point I'm trying to make. Like obviously there are a lot of people who are going to be old by that time, Ekman-Larsson included.
Yeah, this is true. And the buyout's so interesting to me because it is. I was talking about Quads brought up a good point yesterday about the buyout, and it was that in my eyes, I've still been in the camp of maybe there's one GM that will take him for a pick.
No,
in a summer, if he has bound back, if you retain half, you're giving OEL to someone for 3.6. But then Quads brought up a really good point. So are you really wanting to give up draft picks and prospects again to handle this instead of just eating this for, until the 2026-27 season?
Yeah.
I said, you're probably right. And the worst thing to me isn't like, it maybe is the worst thing I think is the buyout this summer. And as much as people would like to see it, we see it right here. The savings this next coming season, $8 million of cap space. That sounds awesome. But you brought it up, 2027 to 2031. It feels weird even saying those years because it's so feels like it's so far down the road, but you're paying still, $2 million plus.
Also, what has this franchise done to deserve the
$8 million cap space?
Like,
hell no. Yeah.
What are they going to do with it? Re-sign JT Miller again?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what are they going to do? Like Jim Benning style, acquire the next OEL? Spend it on a top 6 centerman to replace Horvat? I don't trust this organization with cap space.
Hell no. Yeah.
I'd almost rather them
eating it is maybe the best thing.
Well, and that's the thing too, is over the last 3-4 years, and I think this is the biggest frustration with this franchise. If they had just done nothing, literally just like sat in their offices, twiddled their thumbs all day, listen to Canucks podcasts all day.
Yeah.
And just done nothing, this franchise would be 10 times better because they wouldn't have signed all those Beagle, Eriksson, Roussel. This is the chain link, sort of like how one mistake leads to the other thing too. Back in 2019, was this 2018? I can't even remember now. Signing the Beagle, Roussel contracts was the start of this whole mess.
Right.
Because if you didn't sign those contracts, you would not have had to move, sort of like dump them, pay the price to then acquire Ekman-Larsson and Garland and give up the pick that turned into Dylan Guenther. If you had just done the baseline competence
and even just like, then we could have re-signed Chris Tanev and we would have,
or re-signed Toffoli. Even if you re-signed Toffoli, which I think out of Markstrom, Tanev, Toffoli, I think Toffoli was the obvious, because for Markstrom, it's like, okay, we have Demko. And with Tanev, his game, like Tanev would have the most impact today, but I could at least see the logic where it's like he had so many injuries and it looked like his game was trending downward. I'm like, okay, I can understand why they made that decision, even if you didn't, even if obviously in an alternate timeline you wish you re-signed him. But even with Toffoli, that was the layup, right? Seeing how well he fit with Pettersson. If they had just kept him, then you don't even need Garland. Then you're not making that poison pill deal. And I think that's just the biggest frustration is it seems like every year they shoot themselves in the foot. This offseason with the Miller thing. Again, if this management group did nothing, literally nothing since taking over, this franchise would be in a better position than they are today.
Hard to hear, but Harm, in the 2018-19 season, who would have been their 5th leading scorer if Roussel wasn't here?
Eriksson?
He would have, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that.
I can't believe Antoine Roussel was 5th in scoring in the 2018-19. Maybe things aren't as bad as we thought this year, Harm.
Roussel was good until he blew his knee out.
Yeah,
like his first year in Vancouver, he was actually good, but he just blew his knee out, blew his ACL out, and was never the same.
Still one of my favorite guys to chat with as well. When I dropped that little French on him there,
yeah.
Oh, that's one of the highlights of my career in Zoom interviews at one point. That and the Gaudette Warzone stuff, I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
As well. I want to get to one more thing here before we dive into the prospect pool so much.
Ooh, another positive.
Hey, it's not in the bottom 3 of the league. Canucks had their scouting meetings this weekend in Florida. I wonder if a major decision with everybody coming together, major decision like a coaching change, like a big trade, does this meetings kind of spur that up? I can't help but think that face-to-face conversations with a lot of people from your organization are going to lead to a decision being made. I'm not sure exactly what that decision is going to be, but I really think a decision needs to come out of this. You got all your scouting staff here, or I think a lot of them, at least anyways, whether it be pro and on the amateur side, are going to be down here for these meetings.
Dale Talon leading it back in his backyard.
Yeah, backyard barbecue.
That's actually the nightmare. That's actually the nightmare is if Talon somehow finagles his way into a Canucks management role at some point.
Could be. We'll see if he hosts a good barbecue or not. But what could come of this? Let's turn a negative into a positive with this season. What could come of these meetings where maybe this group makes a realization about something that cues them up to make a change?
Yeah, so in terms of scouting meetings, I think right off the bat, I don't know that it would necessarily have an impact on a coaching decision because that's just going to be Rutherford and Alvin. That's up to them. That's obviously they're going to have to convince the owner, Francesco Aquilini, but that's not something where you bring the scouts in and that they're all of a sudden that Rutherford and Alvin are going to be looking for their input. But what scouting meetings are valuable for is the way they work is a lot of times they'll go team by team through every team's system. Their pro players, amateur players, prospects, kind of go through an evaluation process, and they'll kind of go through, okay, if we were to ever make a trade with Buffalo, what prospects do we like? What American League guys do we like? Which ones do we not want? And it's kind of like doing your prep work, your pre-scouting. So you're prepped for any potential trade conversations or negotiations ahead of the deadline. So really, it's kind of like a league-wide way of valuing assets. So coming out of that, I think you've done all the homework necessary, or most of it anyway, to then really seriously start engaging in trade talks, which is, I'm not saying that they're all of a sudden going to, it's like, oh, scouting meetings are done. Let's all of a sudden, we're going to call all 31 teams and we're making a trade tomorrow. Right. But you're at least prepped and primed. You've been able to have these in-depth conversations, have these long meetings, and you know what you want and what you don't want out of every team. So if a team's calling you about Bo Horvat,
you have your list. You have your list. This is what I want. Yeah.
Yeah. And so based off that, it could sort of accelerate or really sort of just quicken up that process. Yeah. So that's, I think, what you're hoping for.
What I'm thinking is, does that push this organization to finally give us a plan? Because I also think that, like, we need to hear from Patrick Alvin pretty soon here. Yeah. As the media, I know that requests are going to be started to flood in to Canucks PR right now. I expect that we should hear from Alvin soon, as long as the Canucks are willing to present him to the media. And to me, it's like fans need to hear a plan. This Canucks organization is probably losing.
I'm not getting my hopes up.
No, I am. I honestly, do think they have to. They have to give them. They have to get them out here, because I was just about. The Canucks are losing fans faster than ever because everyone is tired of the Myrmidon to the hope that is hope for the best style. Yeah, that this team continues to try year after year. I don't know. It's not like I think one set of meetings in Florida is going to change and give everyone the idea that this is now the direction. But it'd be nice to recap a little bit with the general manager, with us in the media, to talk with him and be like, hey, what is seriously the plan? Because I really think that fans are fed up. The organization has to be fed up. The media is clearly fed. I know how much this, following this team day to day is wearing on me. It's just now, communicate a plan, please. Please come out and communicate a plan, because that's what everyone needs to hear. That, and I think you said this a couple of weeks ago, and I found it really interesting. Was if they give us a plan, then fans know how to judge, media knows how to judge. And I think this was you said this a few weeks ago too. That is very true. That if they tell us a plan of, hey, we're not going to be going for a Stanley Cup this year, that's not something that's probably going to happen, then it's okay, now you can make judgments about not holding on. There's fans who still think a playoffs are a thing, and it's well, why would you trade Bo Horvat? There's still a small chance at us making the playoffs. But if it's communicated that that's not happening, then you can judge that idea very different. And the way that this team is going to make moves here and changes over the future, if you have a plan, you know which way and how to kind of react to the moves that you're going to see from the Canucks instead of being surprised.
So two things. For starters, absolutely, yeah. The fan base needs a plan to be communicated to them. But Patrick Allvin's one of the most useless interviews ever. Yeah. I mean, I point blank asked him around October when the team is struggling, if these struggles continue, are you going to have to rebuild? And with Allvin, it's like if you ask a question like that, he'll just I'm not blaming him for it, but you'll just get a vague sort of like word salad where it's like, oh, we're trying to get better every day. We're building every day. And it's like, okay, that literally means nothing.
Here's what I think, though, at this point. If we do get an Allvin thing, I just think the media is at a point right now where like now that we've had these Allvin conversations, we need to be better with our questions. And I think the media, like, I feel like just the way that the team has been, like the media is ready for it. And I think that the media we need to do better with our questions, honestly, with Allvin, because I think we understand.
Have to be so specific.
Yeah. And we understand a little bit now of how he's going to react. So I think that when he's made available, I have high expectations for the Vancouver media for us to step up.
Second, even if we do hear some of the right things, I'll believe it when I actually see it.
That's the other thing.
In terms of the action, because when Rutherford came and he initially took this team over, he was sat next to Aquilini. I heard a lot of good things.
Oh, yeah.
I heard a lot of promising words. I heard him talk about recognizing how much work this team needs to do. I heard him say that this isn't going to be easy to do. I heard him say that they're going to prioritize trading for younger players, that they're not going to trade any draft picks away. I heard him say that they are going to prioritize clearing up cap flexibility. All of these positive things, none of it came to fruition. They did the opposite. This is the other thing that frustrates me is I can understand why Rutherford and Allvin blame or sort of will always say, well, this cap situation was a lot more difficult than we thought. It's like, yeah, okay, fair. Then why did you make it worse? Why did you sign Ilya Mikheyev? Why did you re-sign JT Miller? Why did you go out and re-sign Brock Besser? You created, it's like there was a hole, and instead of digging your way out of it, you've dug deeper and are now blaming that, oh, we had a big hole in the first place.
Yeah. No, you're bang on with it. These decisions. There it is. Holes, Quad's favorite word on this show here. It's true. That's weird that the holes has come up so much on this show this season, but you're bang on with it. And I think we'll move on a little bit because we've almost spent the whole show on our first ticker here. And you know what? I haven't heard from Alex yet, but I know he loves that ticker, and we haven't even got to the second thing. So let's get to the second thing here. Speaking of holes, the Canucks prospect pool was talked about on The Athletic. Scott Wheeler, great work for you guys over there with the prospects over at The Athletic. I'm sure you guys must have had some input into this, right? You and Drance are involved?
Scott, really? Scott does it his own way. He follows these, I honestly...
Okay, good, because I got a problem with some of the rankings.
Okay,
so,
go for it.
I wanted to know how much you were involved here. I don't want to give away the whole list because obviously you should read the article.
Okay, I'm just going through this now, and I
got some
disagree
numbers.
with.
So number one's going to be Jonathan Lekarmaki, who, by the way, today was the extra forward in the Allsvenskan lineup, and the two players drafted right after him, Noah Ostlund playing second line center. Ostlund scored 2 goals today, and Liam Ogren playing top line. And he didn't score today, but he's playing on the top line. So that's Lekarmaki, number one. Let's get
to cheer everyone up, Faber.
You know what? I'm taking a weekend off of social media this weekend just because, I don't know.
They're playing both days. They're playing both days of the weekend.
Yeah, I'll still my stuff for Canucks Army will still be there, but I just I don't want to be on Twitter this weekend. I need a weekend off, so I'm taking this weekend off. I'm still gonna send Quads all the clips for the prospects and stuff, but. Let's get to number 2 on the list. Let's just skip Lekarmaki because maybe there's some excitement here. I found this extremely interesting. What Scott said for number 2, coming in at Jacob Truscott being number 2 on Scott's list.
Yeah,
that one very much surprised me. Listen, Truscott's had a really good kind of run here, I'd say, over the last 18 months type of thing. Getting a chance to play the World Juniors was great. He's obviously Luke Hughes' partner at Michigan. I think the Canucks are going to be interested in signing him after this season because I do think that Michigan's going through some massive changes on their roster. They're kind of losing. Michigan reminds me of was was it Duke that was always, or no, I'm trying to think of the NCAA basketball team that always just had like one and dones.
Yeah.
What are the blue teams? I can't remember. It wasn't Kansas. It was someone. Someone can help me out in the chat maybe. But Truscott, like, it feels like Michigan's done that a little bit. But he's been one of those guys who's kind of rode with these one and dones. But after like Fantilli leaves and you're going to see Hughes leave, it's going to be a very different looking Michigan team. And I'm not sure unless Truscott's going to be like the captain next year. I think if the option's there for him to go pro, I think he might be in the AHL this season. But number 2 from Scott, I was surprised to see that.
Yeah. So I went back and looked at our prospect list, the one Drancer and I kind of do. And I guess that's why we don't collaborate with Wheeler on that. It's because he's obviously
sounds like drama at the Athletic.
No, Wheeler's best.
He does do good work, and he does. I could tell from the reports. You see this from certain people where they don't. They just report and they don't watch. Like
no, he
Wheeler,
watches.
He had
all
some
the time.
He had some really good input when you could tell, like, okay, he's watching. He gets it.
So in September, in our top 10 Canucks prospect rankings, we had Truscott as an honorable mention.
Right.
So he didn't even crack our top 10 list, which obviously the Canucks don't have a deep top 10. So
Kentucky,
I mean, great.
Sorry,
I hope we're wrong.
I got a Kentucky. Thank you, Justin.
I hope we're wrong.
Yeah.
Like I great. If Truscott's a lot better than we thought, great. They need him. But even it was surprising because he has been a little bit up and down at Michigan. Obviously, I think the last couple of seasons he's found a bit more traction. But I still view him. I still kind of in my mind viewed him as a long, like, not that I wrote him off in terms of making the NHL, but that he'd be a long shot to make it.
Yeah. I see him playing pro hockey. I do.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
I see
Pro
him
hockey
playing in the A for sure. Like I could see him playing in the A this year. Like honestly, I
thought his ceiling would be as a bottom pair defenseman.
Yeah, and
which is great if you can land that because he was drafted late.
The reason why I could see him being higher in some people's eyes is because the way that he plays is a very much of a complementary defenseman. Where listen, he's playing with Luke Hughes. He gets what he has to do when you're playing with the top defenseman. So if you really want to go like ceiling, and what happens when he bursts through the ceiling, he could be a guy who plays with your top defenseman because he understands it. But it's like it's not really at that level of prospect to think that like he's not gonna. Like, I don't think he's gonna be Quinn Hughes' partner in 3 years, right? And I think that's what would make him number 2. Maybe if that's what Scott views him in. But let's get to a few other guys on the list too. You got Yanni Yermo at 3. Klimovich down at 4, Elias Pettersson, DPD at 5. That's someone who I have much higher than 5.
I do as well.
As well as Lucas Forsell at 12. I have him much higher than that. And Artur Silovs at 14. I have him much higher than that. So some interesting stuff, but I tell you what, a really good article from Scott. I'd love to hear different opinions on prospects, especially doing a ranking. And if I'm being honest, I'm currently putting together my top 10 rankings for Canucks Army, which will be up here very soon. And it was cool to hear a different perspective. It didn't change my list at all, reading what Scott wrote, but it was interesting to hear his thoughts on Jacob Truscott coming in at number 2 on the Canucks prospect pool. I'll tell you what, that might say more about the prospect pool. Yeah.
Here's a positive.
Okay.
Because we were talking about the concerns we had earlier. Danila Klimovich.
Yeah, he's moving up.
He's been producing. He's last year 18 points in 62 games.
Mm-hmm.
This year 18 points in 28 games. This was honestly exactly
almost
the sort of step
all of
we
them
wanted
in the last 15 in his last 17
in his last because that's why earlier at the start of the season we were talking about he's kind of struggling again, but he's taking the exact sort of step he needed to. As someone who just a few days ago turned 20, by the way.
Yeah.
Happy belated birthday.
Same day as Boudreaux, same birthday as someone else, too.
I don't remember
who. Baines, maybe?
Maybe.
I think it was Baines, Boudreaux, and Klimovich the other day. We talked about it on the show.
But yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
Great to see.
And
this is what he needed to do. And especially coming off of a strong tournament, I thought, in Penticton in the Young Stars, where he played against competition that was a lot older.
Mm-hmm.
That's at least a positive, a player who's definitely trending in the right direction now.
Yeah. And you know what? It's all happening at 5-on-5, and he's playing in a 4th line role. So what happens when he's playing with the top end AHL players? Is he producing more? Because right now he's producing with a 4th line center and Arshdeep Bains, who really was high in Scott's rankings as well. Arshdeep Bains was. But he's playing a 4th line role, not getting a lot of power play time. And he's putting up all these points at 5-on-5. You're like, wow, okay. This is exciting. This is an exciting thing. The Abbotsford Canucks are exciting. I talk about them all the time here on this show. But the other thing was I loved Pod Colson joking about it. And everyone could see that. The full conversation that I had with Pod Colson's available on our Patreon. But he joked about it, and I had to ask him about stuff with Klimovich. I said, listen, ever since you got here, Klimovich has been scoring. And Pod Colson's quote at the very end of that interview, if you are on the Patreon, if not, check it out, patreon.com/Canucks Combo, $5 and $10 tiers, get all the content. But he was like, the quote was something to the degree of like, look at what he did for 70 games in the AHL. Not good. When I get here, no more. And I was just like, oh, it was incredible. Because Klimovich, I asked him and tried to get him to joke about it. He was like, no, like it's me. I'm working on my game. And some interesting quotes that I tweeted out last week from Klimovich too, talking to him, was like talking about him like reworking his mind and really actually finally buying in to what a coach is telling him, what the Sedins are telling him. So really good positive stuff there on the prospect point. So it was nice. I said impossible to be positive, but look at how we're finishing up the show. Some good stuff. You know what? We'll keep it there because I got something on the ticker there. Big weekend ahead. Let's not do that. Let's just check in on Monday and see how things went. Everyone in the chat, everyone who listened to the podcast, appreciate everyone tuning in, being involved. We'll be back next week, back to our regular schedule.
Here's a positive. At least we're always together. Whatever the Canucks go through, at least if we have to make fun of this team, we'll be doing it together.
Love it.
As opposed to suffering alone.
I like this whole turn a negative into a positive mindset of yours, Harm. It's great. It's good stuff. All right. We'll wrap it up there.
It's been hard.
Yeah.
Well, it's working.
It's been tough.
I think.
It's been tough. I haven't used any of my vacation days yet for work. I've got 10 days left. And I think they might need to be used here pretty quick, if I'm being 100% honest. So we'll see what happens. But aside from that, thanks to everyone, like I said, in the chat, everyone on podcast, everyone online, Twitter, everywhere. I don't know where we're live streaming. Alex has got us up on MySpace Live apparently too. So we'll see that. So shout out to our producer, Alex Allard, for joining us here as well, setting up the show, keeping it running. It's been great to have Alex back this week. And he hasn't put an Oilers Nation logo behind me this week. So thank you for that. I'll have another conversation with Aaron about that, our backup producer. But appreciate everyone in the chat. Everyone have a great weekend. 2 Abbotsford Canucks games this weekend. You'll be seeing some good news coming out of this Canucks organization for sure. So that wraps it up here. Shout out to the folks at Zephyr Epic for the presentation of Harmon on Fridays here because of Zephyr Epic. Shout out to Montana's, all that good stuff. We'll wrap it up there. Oh, thank you, Alex. Betway bets of the day. I can hear you clicking away on the keyboard there, Alex. You want to say something? I know he wants the Betway.
I was just going to remind you of Betway. So.
Yeah, you're the best, Alex. Aaron would have missed it. All right, our single bets for our Betway bets of the day. Connor McDavid over 3.5 shots on net. You can get that at -125. $10 bet will return you 18. And Leon Draisaitl, I got the exact same bet for him. So we're rocking with 2 of the Oilers stars to get over shots today. Playing against the Sharks, I think you're going to see a lot of shots from the Oilers. So simple bets.
Is there an over/under on Canucks fans taking shots while watching the team?
Shots, yeah.
Tequila shots over/under.
Yeah. What's a weekday over/under? What's a weekend over/under?
No, honestly, it's great. Now that we're heading into the weekend, they should. They gotta start a prop bet for that.
Yeah, especially with 2 games this weekend, and the 1 o'clock, the early start there, 2 o'clock on Sunday. We'll see what. We'll see. All right, wrap it up. There it is. Betway. Yeah, I know, Commander Vander. I've almost missed it, but this is what I say. I keep the train on the tracks here on Friday as much as I can, but sometimes the train stalls out. So we'll wrap it up. Everybody have a great weekend. And we will see you next on Monday for the return of the Canucks Conversation. Betway.
Thanks for listening to Canucks Conversation, delivered by DoorDash. Hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.
How about keep it to a